What if I told you that somewhere in the dusty archives of Prague, there exists a collection of photographs so disturbing that historians have kept them hidden for over a century? What if these images could show you exactly how you would look 20, 30, even 50 years in the future, complete with every scar, every wrinkle, every mark that fate had in store for you? My name is Sarah, and today I'm going to tell you about Dr. Vaclav Zrna, a photographer whose camera lens seemed to pierce through the very fabric of time itself. His story begins in 1890 and in the narrow cobblestone streets of Prague's Old Town, where he operated a modest portrait studio that would become the center of one of history's most chilling mysteries. Dr. Zrna wasn't just any photographer. He was a man obsessed with capturing what he called the truth behind the mask, the hidden reality that lay beneath human faces. But what started as an artistic pursuit would evolve into something far more sinister, something that would eventually drive him to madness and leave behind a legacy so terrifying that it remains locked away to this day. The first hint that something was wrong came in 1902 when a young woman named Anna Kradikvilova visited his studio for a wedding portrait. She was 23 years old, radiant and unmarked by time. But when Dr. Zrna developed her photograph, what he saw in that image would haunt him for the rest of his life. Anna's photograph showed something impossible. While her face appeared young and beautiful in person, the developed image revealed deep worry lines etched around her eyes, a jagged scar running from her left ear to her chin, and hair that had turned completely white. Dr. Zrna assumed it was a defect in his chemicals, perhaps a double exposure gone wrong. He took another photograph, then another, but each time, the same disturbing image emerged. Confused and disturbed, Dr. Zrna filed the photographs away and said nothing to Anna. She paid for her portraits and left with conventional images he had borrowed from another photographer. But Dr. Zrna couldn't shake what he had seen. He began experimenting obsessively, testing his equipment, his chemicals, his techniques. Everything appeared normal, yet whenever he photographed certain people, their images showed signs of age and trauma that hadn't yet occurred. Over the following months, Dr. Zrna documented this phenomenon with scientific precision. He photographed over 300 subjects, and in approximately 40% of cases, the developed images showed what he termed temporal displacement. People appeared older, scarred, or changed in ways that defied explanation. Then, in 1905, 3 years after Anna's session, Dr. Zrna received news that made his blood run cold. Anna Kradikvilova had been struck by a runaway carriage on Wenceslas Square. The accident left her with a scar running from her left ear to her chin, and the trauma had turned her hair completely white overnight. She had aged decades in a matter of hours, her face now bearing the exact worry lines that had appeared in his photographs 3 years earlier. This was no coincidence. Dr. Zrna began tracking down other subjects whose photographs had shown similar anomalies. What he discovered would drive any rational person to the brink of madness. Every single prediction had come true. Milan Dvorak, a robust 40-year-old blacksmith whose photo had shown him gaunt and missing his left arm, lost that limb in a forge accident exactly 2 years later. Bezina Savobodova, whose portrait revealed a large birthmark that hadn't been on her face during the session, developed the exact mark in the exact location within 18 months. Even more disturbing were the photographs that showed subjects with hollow, lifeless eyes, without exception. These people died within 5 years of their portraits being taken. Dr. Zrna became consumed with understanding his cursed gift. He studied ancient texts on divination, consulted with mystics and spiritualists, even corresponded with other photographers across Europe to see if anyone else had experienced similar phenomena. His inquiries led him to discover references to similar cases dating back centuries. Artists and craftsmen whose works seemed to predict future events with unsettling accuracy. One case particularly caught his attention: Francesco Melzi, an apprentice to Leonardo da Vinci, who had painted portraits that allegedly showed subjects in their future states. According to surviving letters, Melzi's paintings had driven several nobles to suicide after they saw their own deaths reflected in his work. The technique, whatever it was, seemed to be passed down through certain bloodlines. Appearing sporadically throughout history, Dr. Zerner discovered that his grandmother had been known in their village as a woman who could see beyond the present. She had been shunned by neighbors who claimed she could predict deaths and disasters simply by looking at someone's reflection in water. The connection was undeniable. This ability, this curse, ran in his blood. As word of Dr. Zerner's unusual photographs began to spread through Prague's underground occult circles, people started coming to him specifically for glimpses of their futures. Some were thrill-seekers, others were desperate souls hoping to change their fate. But Dr. Zerner quickly learned that knowledge of the future was not a gift, it was a torment. He photographed Jaroslav Hus, a young theology student who begged to see his future. The image showed Jaroslav in priest's robes, but his face was twisted with madness, his eyes wild and unfocused. Unable to bear the burden of this knowledge alone, Dr. Zerner made a fatal mistake. He showed Jaroslav the photograph. The young man became obsessed with preventing his predicted insanity, convinced that by avoiding the priesthood, he could change his fate. Instead, his desperate attempts to alter his future drove him to exactly the madness the photograph had predicted. This pattern repeated itself with devastating consistency. Those who saw their prophetic portraits became consumed with either preventing or fulfilling their predicted fates, creating self-fulfilling prophecies that twisted their lives into the very shapes the photographs had revealed. Dr. Zerner realized he had become an unwitting agent of fate itself, his camera serving as a window into predetermined destinies that perhaps were never meant to be seen. The weight of this responsibility began to crush him. He started seeing the future images of his subjects, even before developing the photographs, as if the ability was growing stronger and more persistent. By 1908, Dr. Zerner could no longer bear to look directly at people. Every face he saw was overlaid with its future self, aged, scarred, changed by time and circumstance. He began wearing dark glasses and conducting his sessions in near darkness, relying on muscle memory to operate his camera. His final documented case was perhaps the most disturbing. In 1909, he photographed a 6-year-old girl named Marie Novikova. The child's portrait showed her as a young woman, but with eyes that held depths of sorrow no child should ever know. Around her neck in the photograph was a noose. Dr. Zerner destroyed that photograph immediately, but the image was burned into his memory. He tracked Marie's family obsessively, sending anonymous letters warning them to watch their daughter carefully, to keep her away from high places and ropes. His interference became so persistent that the family moved away from Prague to escape what they perceived as the harassment of a madman, unable to save Marie and tormented by the knowledge of countless other fates he had witnessed but could not prevent. Dr. Zerner made a decision that would seal his own tragic destiny. On December 15, 1909, he photographed himself. The image that developed showed Dr. Vaclav Zerner exactly as he appeared in life. With one horrifying exception, his eyes were completely black, as if they had been burned out from the inside. 3 days later, neighbors found him dead in his darkroom, his eyes indeed burned beyond recognition, his camera smashed to pieces beside his body. The official cause of death was listed as chemical poisoning from photographic solutions. But those who knew Dr. Zerner suspected a darker truth. He had finally seen one prediction to many, his own death, and had chosen to fulfill it rather than continue living with his terrible gift. But the story doesn't end with Dr. Zerner's death. His assistant, who discovered the body, also found a collection of over 800 prophetic photographs hidden in a lead-lined chest. These images showed the futures of people from all walks of life, including several who wouldn't be born for decades to come. The photographs were turned over to the Austrian authorities, who were governing Prague at the time, recognizing the potential for mass panic if these images became public. They classified the entire collection and stored it in the Habsburg Imperial Archives. When the Austro-Hungarian Empire fell, the photographs were transferred to the Czechoslovak government, and later to the Czech Republic's National Archives. According to my research, the photographs remain there today, stored in a temperature vault in a section of the archives that requires special clearance to access. The few historians who have seen them describe the experience as deeply unsettling, not just because of what the photographs show, but because of how accurately they have continued to predict the futures of the subjects still living. In 1995, an archivist named Dr. Pavel Svoboda was granted access to study 10 of the photographs as part of a research project on early 20th century photography techniques. Among the images he examined was one of a middle-aged man whose face showed signs of a future stroke. Dr. Svoboda became curious about the subject and managed to track down his identity through city records. The man in the photograph was František Novak, who had been photographed by Dr. Zerner in 1906 at the age of 30. If still alive, he would have been 124 years old in 1995, clearly impossible. But Dr. Svoboda's research revealed that František had indeed lived to the remarkable age of 98, dying in 1969, from complications of a massive stroke that had left his face paralyzed in exactly the manner shown in Dr. Zerner's photograph. Even more disturbing was Dr. Svoboda's discovery that some of the photographs appeared to show people who hadn't been born until decades after Dr. Zerner's death. One image, dated 1907, showed a young woman whose clothing and hairstyle were unmistakably from the 1950s. Another showed a man wearing what appeared to be modern eyeglasses not invented until the 1930s. Dr. Svoboda's report on these findings was classified immediately, and he was transferred to a different department. When interviewed, years later, he would only say that some knowledge is too dangerous to be shared, and that Dr. Zerner's photographs represented a window into human destiny that was never meant to be opened. The case of Dr. Vaclav Zerner raises questions that challenge our understanding of time, fate, and free will. Was he truly capturing images of predetermined futures, or was he somehow causing these futures to manifest through the act of observation? Some researchers theorize that Dr. Zerner had stumbled upon a photographic technique that could capture quantum possibilities, potential futures that existed in superposition until observed and collapsed into reality. Others believe he had tapped into what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, accessing archetypal patterns that govern human destiny. But perhaps the most chilling possibility is the simplest one, that our futures are indeed fixed, written in time-like words on a page, and Dr. Zerner had simply found a way to read ahead in the Book of Fate. The photographs remain locked away in Prague, their secrets guarded by archivists who understand that some doors should never be opened. But sometimes, late at night in the Czech National Archives, staff members report hearing the sound of a camera shutter clicking in empty hallways, as if Dr. Zerner's spirit continues his work, documenting futures that haven't yet come to pass. And perhaps most disturbing of all is the question that keeps me awake at night. If Dr. Zerner's camera could show people their futures by capturing them in photographs, what might our modern digital cameras be capturing that we haven't yet learned to see? Every selfie, every portrait, every image we create, are we unknowingly documenting our own fates, leaving digital prophecies scattered across the internet for future generations to decode? The next time you look at a photograph of yourself, really look at it. Look into your own eyes and ask yourself, what secrets might be hidden there? What futures might be waiting to emerge? Because if Dr. Zerner's story teaches us anything, it's that sometimes the most terrifying truths are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with the right eyes to see them. Thank you for joining me on this journey into one of history's most disturbing mysteries. If you found this story as fascinating and chilling as I did, make sure to subscribe for more hidden histories and forgotten horrors. And remember, some doors are locked for a reason, but that doesn't mean we can't peek through the keyhole. Until next time, keep questioning what you see, because reality might be far stranger than any of us dare to imagine.